Good morning, everyone. Listen, I'm really impressed with you all. At 9 o'clock, we had to play that video 3 times before they settled down. We just kept turning it up a little bit more, a little bit more. Man, I have loved all the palms that I've seen today. We've had very traditional palms come through the door. Last service, probably my favorite was someone who came in with a less traditional shirt. It was palms, yes, but with Bigfoot, which I think Jeremy might have tried to steal it. Today, though, in this service, I'm told, stand up, Lowell. Lowell has on what he says is an authentic Magnum PI shirt here. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I like it. And you know, like this has been like a snowball. We didn't used to wear palms on Palm Sunday. And then I think it was Krista. Krista, you started the tidal wave, I think. And every year she ups the ante a little bit. She clashes a little bit more. And we love it that much more. Is it matching today? Carla says no. Carla says no. Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah. Today, we are continuing our series, Working Through the Lord's Prayer, and we arrive at kind of a peculiar part of this prayer. Why is it peculiar? Well, because if you were to open up a more modern translation of the Bible and to flip to Matthew 6 and start reading along in this prayer we've been praying together, guess what? You wouldn't find it there. It's MIA. It's missing in action. However, most of us learn this prayer in the King James Version. And if you were to open up to your King James Version, voila, there it is. So what in the world's going on there, right? When something like that happens, it always makes me curious. And so I dug in to understand more fully myself. But the reality is, whenever the King James Version was translated way back in the 1600s, they used the best manuscripts of the New Testament that they had available. But since the 1600s, quite a bit has happened, right? And since then, we've discovered a whole lot more manuscripts. And not only have we discovered more manuscripts, we've discovered earlier manuscripts, which means they tend to be more accurate. And so, based on those more and older and more reliable manuscripts, whenever we get to like our NIV, when we start reading through the prayers based on them, what we discover is that it ends in a pretty abrupt way with and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil, period. And that's it. And so again, like, why is that? How has this line, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever, snuck into our saying of the Lord's Prayer? And why has it lasted all this time? Why has it stuck with us? In all honesty, this happens a whole lot more than we realize. For example, we have the happy birthday song, correct? And I'm going to put it on the screen as if we don't know the words, but we know this. And I was going to ask if it was anybody's birthday today, but I realized it's my brother-in-law's birthday. So we'll just sing this to Jonathan, all right? I'm going to turn off my microphone because I don't want to scare you.
It's Ben's birthday, too.
It's his birthday? Ben's birthday? All right, so Jonathan and Ben, or Ben and Jonathan, you all decide in a moment, all right? We'll make it extra fun. But here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ben. Happy birthday to you. Well done. It was also Pam's birthday yesterday. She threatened me to not sing to her again in this service. But I don't see her, so just tell her we did, okay? Tell her we did. What was that? Brenda's? Yours is today? It was last week. Let's see. Thursday. All right. 83. Oh, my goodness, Miss Brenda. Woo! Finally get... Did y'all hear her? She said, I'm finally getting old. So that's how the... Evan? Are we pointing to Evan? Who else are we pointing to? Krista. When's your birthday? Tuesday. Thursday? She doesn't... You share a birthday with Miss Brenda?
No, it's coming.
Oh. Okay, I'm confused. I don't know whose birthday is when, except that it's all around this time. So, like, lots of good stuff happens at this point in time, I guess. But that's the song. We know the song. But over time, like, we tended to fluff this song up a little bit, right? Like, we felt like it needed a little something to make it feel more complete. So how many of you all do cha-cha-chas at the end of each line? Anybody? Yeah. Anybody put a good and many more at the end of the song? Yeah. Anybody else from the 90s and keep that going? And many more on Channel 4 and Scooby-Doo on Channel 2. And we can keep going. There's a lot. There's a whole lot there, okay? But in a way, this is what happened with the Lord's Prayer. And it happened very quickly within the life of the church, okay? Less than 100 years after the life of Jesus, there's this book that appears that's called the Didache. And in that, which is also like the teachings of the 12 apostles, in that they're giving instruction to the early church. And they're telling them, like, this is what it looks like for you to do communion together. This is what it looks like for you to do baptisms. And it has a section on prayer. If you were to open up that book and read that section on prayer, it's going to sound very familiar. It's like word for word Matthew chapter 6. Except when you come to the very end of that prayer, it adds something in there. It says, "For thine is the power and the glory forever." Kingdom's not there yet, but they're already working into this conclusion for this prayer. So very early on, we have some version of "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever." And again, like, why? Why is it there? Well, I think on a purely practical level, it's a way for us to kind of know, like, we're wrapping this prayer up, right? Like, we pray, and what do we usually say at the end of our prayers? In Jesus' name, right? And we all know when we say in Jesus' name, we're about to land the plane, right? Everybody starts reaching for the bacon in the middle of the table or whatever it might be. And so, like, functionally, I think it was meant to kind of sum everything up, to let people know it was ending. This was common in Jewish prayers at the time. If you go back to 1 Chronicles, you can find a conclusion to a prayer that sounds a whole lot like this. However, beyond this functional level, I think when we look at this, what we discover is that it actually grounds everything that we have prayed before this. You know, we come to God and we ask him for our daily bread. We ask him for his forgiveness. We ask him to deliver us from evil. And why? Why him? Why not someone or something else? It's because we believe that he is the king. It's because we believe that he holds all the power. It's because we believe that he alone is worthy of glory. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory. It isn't just some cute, catchy way to end a prayer. It is a firm foundation. A firm foundation for all that we've prayed, but also a firm foundation upon which we can build our lives. Remember, the Lord's Prayer is not meant to just be these words that we mindlessly recite. No, it's a prayer that is meant to shape how we live our lives. And so what would it look like if we were to walk out of here today and we actually started to live like God's already in charge? Like he truly does have his kingdom here, and that he does hold the power, and that the glory is his. What would it look like if we started to live as if he is ruling and reigning, not just in heaven, but right here, right now on earth? Because you guys, when we start living like with that as our mindset, it changes everything. Jesus' first disciples, they had to grapple what it looked like for them to live their lives in light of the fact that Jesus' kingdom was about to come. They, along with all of God's people, they had been watching and waiting for a king to come for hundreds of years at this point. They're waiting for a king to show up who's going to drive out their enemies and set all things right. A king who's going to bring God's kingdom right here on earth. And so when the disciples had encountered Jesus, they had gone all in on him. You know, they had staked their lives on him becoming this ruler. And so as they're going into Jerusalem following him on the first Palm Sunday, they have to feel excited because it feels like it's finally starting to happen. That Jesus is about to actually go and sit on the throne and overthrow Rome. It had to feel so close that they could taste it. so close that they could reach out and grab a hold of it. As they're walking into Jerusalem, they, like all the people gathered there, what they engage in as Jesus walks in to Jerusalem, just like we reenacted earlier, everything about it speaks of their expectation that he is going to be king. They take off their cloaks and they lie them on the ground in front of Jesus. And it's a way of them looking at Jesus and saying, Jesus, we'll give you everything. There is nothing we'll keep from you. We'll give everything. We respect you. We honor you to the point that we don't even want the donkey that you're riding to step in the dirt. They go before Jesus and they're singing these royal hymns. They're singing, Hosanna, Hosanna, son of David, they shout. Hosanna means save us. Save us, son of David. They say, son of David, David, their most revered and loved king. But perhaps nothing speaks more powerfully about the people's expectation that Jesus is about to become king than them waving the palm branches in their hands. You know, we read that story and we're like, that's peculiar. You know, like why palm branches? Is it just like, something like, well, that's what we've got. We're going to pluck these off the tree and we'll wave them as Jesus is coming in. No, this isn't something they just do for no reason. They're actually reenacting something that happened 200 years before. There was another ruler, a person named Judas Maccabeus, who had driven out their oppressors. And as he had made his way into Jerusalem to go and take the throne, guess what the people had done? They had waved palm branches in the air. And so as Jesus is entering the city with his disciples, the people are in essence saying, do it again, Jesus. Overthrow our oppressors. Go and take your seat on the throne. This was their expectation, that Jesus would be a conqueror who wore a crown. And the disciples, here they are. They've been following Jesus the whole time. They are perfectly poised to take privileged positions in his kingdom. They are perfectly poised to grab a hold of some power whenever he takes his seat on the throne. And so a few nights later, this is what's on their minds as they sit down to have a meal with Jesus, a meal that they don't know it yet, but it's actually the last meal that they will ever share with him. Jesus, on this night, he is rapidly moving toward the cross, but guess what the disciples are doing? They're arguing about who is the greatest. This is what Luke 22:24 says. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. And we hear that and we're kind of like, wow, come on guys, can't you do a little better than that? Doing it right in front of Jesus, right? But what we need to realize is that the seating arrangement at that meal probably caused that conversation, this dispute, to rise up to the top. At this point in history, the way that people dined was not what we typically think about, right? Like this is the picture of the Last Supper that was painted by Leonardo da Vinci, not DiCaprio, but Leonardo da Vinci. You know how it is like when something enters your mind like one time and then you just know you're going to do it wrong like from then on forever? Yeah. So every time I have to pause, not DiCaprio. Da Vinci, Leonardo da Vinci, he has this picture that's very famous that we see all over the place. Jesus is in the middle, it's this long table, everyone's gathered around him. But actually at this point in time, the meal would have looked more like this. It would have looked more like people kind of reclining at a table, at tables that were called triclinium. The Romans were occupying Israel at this point in time, and so they influenced what eating habits looked like that. At that point, there was 3 U-shaped couches, and there was the central table. But whenever you went to eat at this table, you didn't get to just recline wherever you wanted. No, there were rules, okay? This was a very formal affair. It was not casual. You had a certain seat that you were assigned. There was a seating chart, kind of like if you think back to middle school or high school, you probably have a mental map in your mind of where everyone was supposed to sit when they came into the lunchroom, right? Like here's the athletes, and here's the band people, and here's the drama club, and here's the scholars. Like I can still see that in my school. But in Jesus' time, this is what the seating arrangement looked like. When you would go into someone's home, the host would sit at the table on the left, and then the most honored guest would sit directly to his left at the table at the top. And then as you went around the table, not only were you served later and later because the honored guest got served first, but you knew where you stood. You knew as you went around the table that your status was getting lower and lower, that you had less and less power, that you were less and less honored. And so you can understand then why Jesus' disciples might have been talking about this on this night. They're sitting there at this table and they're sizing one another up, right? Like they're looking at each other and they're like, well, he's sitting there and I'm sitting here. And they're making their arguments for why they should be sitting closer to Jesus. And again, we hear that and we're like, that's a little over the top. That sounds a little silly. But the truth of the matter is, like, we all do this, right? From time to time, it might not be out loud at a dinner table where everyone can hear us, but we begin looking around at others and we begin trying to figure out, like, where do I stack up? We can use our words and our actions to try to position ourselves as close to the pinnacle of greatness as we possibly can. We can wear ourselves out trying to push for power and to perform for applause. And we might even do it all like in the name of Jesus, trying to honor him, to make him proud. And maybe today you're sitting here and you find yourself like trying to catch your breath because you've been working so hard, trying to get yourself positioned at a certain seat and a certain table somewhere in our world. But when Jesus overhears what is being said that night, his response is not to reinforce this way of thinking. He doesn't say, okay, I'll settle this. Everybody stand up. I'm going to number you off from 1 to 12, from the greatest to the least, and you all know. No, what Jesus does is he takes this whole idea and he throws it out the window. He takes it and he turns it upside down. Verse 25 says, Jesus said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors, but you are not to be like that. In other words, Jesus says, these rulers of the Gentiles, they grab for power. They love to put on display, their position. They want everyone to know how important they are. They hand out favors and they call themselves benefactors. I don't think Jesus used air quotes, but if ever Jesus used air quotes, I think it would have been here, because there's definitely an eye roll as he said benefactors, because everyone knew, they're handing out favors, but it's for their own benefit, right? It was all about them, about making their own name great. Jesus, he holds up this example of these Gentile rulers, and Jesus' disciples, they would get this, right? Like they could look around, they're occupied by Rome. They knew what this kind of leadership looked like. And you and I, when we look around in our world, it's not hard for us to probably conjure up images of what this kind of leader looks like for us either. But Jesus, he looks all of them in the eye that night, sitting around that table. And he says, but you are not to be like that. And why? Because I am not that kind of king. He says, instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest. The youngest had the lowest rank in the family. They had nothing promised to them. And the one who rules like the one who rules like the one who serves. A servant had no power. They had no status. They had no claim to honor. And then verse 27, for who is greater, the one who is at the table or the one who serves? Is it not the one who is at the table? But he says, I am among you like a servant. Jesus, he makes himself abundantly clear. The world crowns the one who is served, but God calls the greatest the one who serves. The one who gives away their power to lift up others. The one who uses their position for the good of their neighbors. The one who sacrifices privilege to walk alongside their brothers and their sisters. The disciples, they had expected to find greatness in a crown. But Jesus, he points them to the cross instead. You see, the cross, that is where we see most fully God's kingdom. This is where we see most fully his power. This is where we see realized in all of its beauty his glory. He had come to be one who serves, even to the point of laying down his very life. And he calls his disciples, past and present, to become like him, to become those who serve, to become people who no longer seek crowns, but who take up their crosses and follow him. It is a radical reversal, isn't it? Like almost everyone and everything in our culture screams at us, and I mean screams. Like, you need to be spectacular. You need to set yourself apart. You need to be a star. You need to have a lead role. But Jesus, he lets us in on a little secret. He tells us, you know what? Actually, true fulfillment is found in having a supporting role. It might sound small. It might sound insignificant, but that's only because we have forgotten. We have forgotten what greatness looks like when God is in charge. One of my favorite videos on the internet, which is a big thing to say because we all know like there are a lot of videos on the internet, but by far one of my favorite videos on the internet is of this little boy. He has auditioned to be in a play at school, and it's The Christmas Story. And he gets in the car and he is excited to tell his mom about the role that he has received. He says it's a classic role. So you all tell me, what are some of the classic roles in the Christmas Story? Wise men, Mary, Joseph, innkeeper, shepherd, what was that? The donkey, right? Classic roles. So let's see what classic role he got.
Guess what I am for the nativity? I'm a classic one.
Classic role, is it? Classic part?
Yeah.
Joseph.
No.
One of the three wise men.
No.
One of the innkeepers.
No.
Call rejected.
But it's a classic part.
Yeah.
Okay. You tell me then, because
I'm door holder number 3. I'll be holding doors.
that's amazing. Holding doors for who?
Probably Joseph and Mary.
Oh my gosh, were you pleased when they said that?
Yeah. And what did you do? And I was like, I'm a door holder. Get in there. Let's go. Yeah.
Whoa.
That's right. You guys, think about it. How might our days look different if we woke up every single day excited and thrilled that we get to be door holder number 3? And we walked out the door, we were like, all right, let's go, get in there. Instead of jockeying for position and expending all that energy in that way, like what if we walked out the door just like watching and waiting to bless someone around us? Like instead of us, trying to grab for power, what if instead we use that same energy to get creative about how it is that we can take somebody by surprise and make their day better? Instead of like clinging to this privilege that we have, what if we became the person who made someone else feel seen and heard and important? When we start living like God is already in charge, something shifts inside of us. We kind of stop caring like what seat we're sitting in at the table. We stop needing to prove ourselves. We stop grasping for control because we know that something deeper is true. We know that the kingdom and the power and the glory are already God's. And that sets us free. It sets us free from all of our striving so that we can get busy serving. Not because it earns us anything, but because we follow a king who gave up everything. A king who didn't take a crown, but who took up a cross. Because of him, we don't have to chase after greatness anymore. Instead, we get to follow the one that Philippians 2 describes like this, the one who made himself nothing by taking on the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. In just a moment, the band's going to come back and play for us. And as they do, they're going to lead us in a time of remembering Jesus' greatest act of service, him laying down his life for the sake of the world. We're going to cover up all the symbols in the room that represent Jesus as a way of us being able to experience in just like some small measure the weight of his loss, the sorrow of the day that the light of the world was overcome by darkness for just this brief moment. Before we gather again next week to celebrate the resurrection, the ultimate victory that established his kingdom and his power and his glory forever. But today, as we stand here together at the foot of the cross, may we consider together, what are the crowns that we've been chasing? And what would it look like for us to just take those crowns and put them here at the feet of Jesus, and to instead hear his call to follow him by taking up our cross, because his is the kingdom, and his is the power, and his is the glory forever.